My name is Layla, and I'm the daughter of Sami Al-Arian, a Palestinian American professor who's been in prison for more than 5 years. Today, my father's on the 44th day of a hunger strike. My mother, brother, and I actually visited him yesterday at an immigration facility in Virginia. He looked extremely thin and was very, very weak. He's lost more than 30 pounds. And he also looked like a shadow of his former self. My mother began sobbing as soon as she saw the way he looked. I should also say my father hasn't seen a doctor for more than a week. My father began a hunger strike on March 3rd for a very simple reason: to protest continued harassment and abuse by a U.S. government that's intent on ensnaring him in a new case and keeping him in jail for years beyond his release date. This case is a clear example of gross prosecutorial misconduct and abuse of power. This is justice under the Bush administration. When my father was arrested in February 2003, John Ashcroft's Justice Department claimed it a victory in the fight against terror. But a federal jury in a conservative district in Florida, after looking at reams of quote-unquote evidence, rejected the government's case wholesale. After a 6-month trial that cost taxpayers $50 million, the prosecution's case fell apart completely. My father's attorneys, in fact, rested their case without presenting a single witness. Our defense was the First Amendment. On December 6, 2005, the judge in the case read not guilty verdicts for 20 minutes for my father and his 3 co-defendants. None of this ultimately mattered. After being acquitted of the most serious charges against him, my father was threatened with a retrial. Though the overwhelming majority of jurors voted for full acquittal, 2 of them had stubbornly refused to acquit my father based not on any evidence, but on their feelings, this according to another juror. To avoid a trial on the hung counts and to finally bring his nightmare to an end, my father decided to sign a plea agreement. Little did we know that we would be standing here 2 years later, begging and pleading with the government to keep their end of this plea agreement. Under the plea agreement, my father should have been released last April at the latest. But when he didn't testify before a grand jury because it was a violation of that plea agreement, he was held in civil contempt, pushing his release date to April 11th of this year at the latest. So why hasn't my father been released and deported as promised? This is justice under the Bush administration. My father's case is no longer about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict or about any statements he may have made 30 years ago. This is about the rule of law. My father's been kept away from his family for far too long. How much longer will the government seek to imprison him in order to punish him for his views, speeches, and associations? This case is closely watched by millions of people all over the world, including the Middle East and Europe. We cannot lecture others about human rights and civil liberties when we hold prisoners for political reasons on our own shores. On Friday, the day of my father's scheduled release, he was placed in the custody of immigration officials. We ask these officials to release and deport him immediately. We ask that no new charges be brought against him. We ask that he's able to be reunited with us, his family, after this long and painful ordeal. Enough is enough.